My phone rang at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the clock, unable to sleep, wondering why my husband Marcus hadn't come home yet. Again, when I saw unknown number flash across the screen, my first instinct was to ignore it. Telemarketers, scammers, wrong numbers, nothing good comes from unknown calls in the middle of the night. But something made me answer. Maybe it was the insomnia. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was just exhaustion making me reckless. Hello! My voice was rough with fatigue. What I heard on the other end made my blood turn to ice. A woman was crying. Not the gentle, dignified crying you do at weddings or sad movies. This was raw, ugly sobbing, the kind that comes from somewhere deep in your chest when your entire world has just collapsed. "Is this Olivia?" she choked out between sobs. "Olivia Chen? Marcus Chen's wife." My heart started pounding. "Who is this?" "My name is Amber," she said, her voice breaking. God, I don't even know how to say this. I'm your husband's girlfriend. Or I was. Until about 3 hours ago when I found out he's married. To you. And to someone else." The room started spinning. I sat up in bed, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "What did you just say?" "He's married to you," Amber repeated, her voice steadier now, but filled with a rage I recognized immediately. "And he's married to a woman named Jessica in San Diego. And there might be others. I don't know. I found his other phones. He has 3 phones, Olivia. 3. I couldn't breathe. The air in our bedroom, the bedroom I decorated with soft gray linens and framed photos of our wedding day, suddenly felt toxic. "I need to see you," Amber said urgently. "I have proof. I have everything. Bank statements, photos, text messages, marriage certificates. He's been running a con on both of us. Maybe more of us. And I think," her voice dropped to a whisper, "I think he's done this before. Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it." That phone call changed everything. But to understand how I got here, to this moment of sitting in my bed at 3 a.m, listening to my husband's mistress tell me our entire marriage was a lie, you need to know how it all began. You need to know about the perfect man I thought I'd married. The one who swept me off my feet with grand gestures and promises of forever. The one who turned out to be a professional con artist with multiple wives across multiple states. And you need to know about what Amber and I did next. Because when 2 women discover they've been played by the same man, when they realize they've been his victims in an elaborate fraud scheme, they have a choice. They can turn on each other. Or they can turn on him. We chose the latter. Let me tell you how this all started. And then I'll tell you how we destroyed him so completely that he'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison wishing he'd never heard either of our names. My name is Olivia Chen. I'm 34 years old, and up until that phone call, I thought I had everything figured out. I'm a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates in Seattle, one of the top accounting firms in the Pacific Northwest. I make good money. 6 figures, bonuses, the whole package. I own a beautiful condo in Capitol Hill with views of the Sound. I have a graduate degree from UW, a tight circle of friends, and a wine collection I'm genuinely proud of. But none of that mattered as much as what I thought I had. A loving husband who made me feel like the center of the universe. I met Marcus Chen 4 years ago at a conference in Portland. I was there presenting on forensic accounting techniques. Ironically, methods for detecting financial fraud. He was supposedly there representing his tech startup, some vague company that did blockchain solutions for enterprise clients. Looking back now, I realize I never fully understood what his company actually did. Every time I asked for details, he'd give me a charming smile and say something like, "Baby, if I explained it, your eyes would glaze over. Even I barely understand it half the time, and I'm the founder." Then he'd laugh and kiss my forehead and change the subject. Red flag number 1. But I was too dazzled to see it. Marcus is objectively handsome. 6'2", athletic build, the kind of smile that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. He had this way of looking at me, really looking at me, like he was memorizing every detail of my face. On our first date, he asked about my work and actually listened. He asked follow-up questions. He made me feel fascinating. Do you know how rare that is? How rare it is to meet someone who makes you feel seen. He pursued me with an intensity that felt like being caught in a warm current. Flowers delivered to my office with handwritten notes. Surprise weekend trips to Vancouver and San Francisco. Late-night phone calls that lasted for hours where we talked about everything. Our childhoods, our dreams, the scars we carried. He told me about his parents, immigrants from Taiwan who'd built a successful restaurant business in California before they died in a car accident when he was 25. He told me about the guilt he carried, about how he'd been driving and lost control on a rainy night, how he'd survived and they hadn't. He cried when he told me. Real tears. I held him in my apartment while he sobbed against my shoulder, and I felt this fierce protectiveness wash over me. This man who seemed so strong, so capable, was letting me see his broken places. Red flag number 2. The story was designed to make me feel needed, to make me want to save him. And it probably wasn't even true. We got married 16 months after we met. Looking back, that seems fast, but at the time it felt right. He proposed on a beach at sunset. Cliché, I know, but it was beautiful. He got down on one knee and said, "Olivia, you're the only person who's ever really known me. The only one who makes me want to be better. I don't want to waste another day not being your husband." I said yes before he even finished the question. The wedding was small, intimate, just 30 people at a winery in Woodinville. My parents flew in from San Diego, my father, a retired engineer, and my mother, who'd been a high school math teacher. My younger sister Emma came with her fiancé. A handful of close friends. Marcus's side of the venue was notably sparse. He said most of his family was overseas, that his friends were scattered across the country building their own startups. The few people who came, his best man Tom, a couple of college friends, his cousin from L.A., I'd never met before and never saw again after the wedding. Red flag number 3. But I was too happy to question it. Our honeymoon in Bali was perfect. 2 weeks of sunrise yoga, beachside dinners, and the kind of sex that makes you forget your own name. Marcus was attentive, romantic, constantly touching me, calling me his wife with this reverence in his voice. "I can't believe you're mine," he'd whisper at night, tracing patterns on my skin. I'm the luckiest man alive. When we got back to Seattle, we moved into my condo. Marcus said his lease was up anyway, and my place was bigger. He said he'd contribute equally to expenses once his latest funding round closed. The investors were being slow, he explained, but the deal was definitely happening. The money never came through. Looking back, I realized Marcus never paid for anything. Not rent, not utilities, not groceries. He always had an excuse. The funding was delayed. A client hadn't paid yet. His bank had frozen his account due to suspicious activity that was really just their overzealous fraud detection. "Baby, I'm so embarrassed," he'd say, looking genuinely distressed. "Let me get this next one. I promise." And I'd wave him off because I made good money, and what was mine was his, right? That's what marriage was supposed to be. Partnership. Teamwork. Red flag number 4000. He traveled constantly for work. 2, 3 times a month, sometimes for a week at a time. San Francisco, Austin, New York, San Diego, Denver. Always meeting with investors, he said. Always this close to closing a major deal. I believed him because why wouldn't I? He sent me photos from hotel rooms and restaurants. He called me every night, sometimes twice a day. He FaceTimed me from airport lounges. He brought me presents, artisan chocolates from San Francisco, a leather journal from Austin, a cashmere scarf from New York. What I didn't know was that those cities weren't business trips. They were where his other wives lived. The signs were there, but I explained them all away. The separate phone he kept for work calls that he never let me touch. The password-protected laptop he said contained proprietary company information. The vague answers about his day. The occasional slip-ups where he'd call me by the wrong name and then laugh it off as being exhausted. "Sorry, babe, I've been on calls all day. Brains fried. You know how it is." And I did know. I worked long hours too. I understood being mentally drained. I understood needing space. I prided myself on not being one of those clingy, paranoid wives who needed constant access to their husband's phone. God, I was such a fool. My friends loved him. He was charming at dinner parties, always offering to help clean up, asking thoughtful questions, making everyone laugh. My sister Emma thought he was perfect. "You really hit the jackpot, Liv," she'd tell me. "He's like a romance novel hero come to life." My parents had reservations at first, my dad in particular. At our first family dinner, my father pulled me aside in the kitchen and said, "There's something about him I can't put my finger on. He's almost too smooth, too rehearsed." But Marcus won them over eventually. He spent a whole afternoon helping my dad fix his vintage Mustang. He brought my mother first edition copies of her favorite books. He talked about wanting to have kids, about how important family was to him. "You were right to be cautious," he told my father during our rehearsal dinner, putting a hand on his shoulder. "If I had a daughter like Olivia, I'd be protective too. I promise you, sir, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she's happy and safe." My father teared up. My mother grabbed my hand under the table and squeezed. Red flag number infinity. Anyone who's that good at manipulation has had a lot of practice. Our marriage had a rhythm. I'd wake up early, go to work, come home to find Marcus either out at a meeting or working from home in our spare bedroom he'd converted to an office. We'd have dinner together, usually something I cooked or takeout he'd ordered. We'd watch Netflix, talk about our days, make love, fall asleep tangled together. On weekends when he wasn't traveling, we'd explore Seattle. Pike Place Market, hiking trails in the Cascades, brewery tours, farmers markets. We looked like any other young professional couple building a life together. I posted photos on Instagram. #husband and wife, #married life, #myperson. My friends commented with heart emojis. Strangers liked our pictures. We looked happy because I was happy. I had no idea that while I was posting photos of us at brunch, he had another phone in his pocket where another woman was texting him good morning. Where another wife was asking what time he'd be home for dinner in San Diego. Where a third woman in Denver was sending him photos in lingerie. I had no idea that the man sleeping next to me, the one who held me close and whispered, "I love you" into my hair every night, was running the same script with 3 other women in 3 other cities. I had no idea that my entire marriage was a performance, and I was the only one who didn't know I was watching a show. But I was about to find out. And when I did, when Amber called me at 2:47 a.m. and shattered the illusion into a million pieces, I had to decide who I was going to be. Was I going to be the naive wife who buried her head in the sand and forgave him? Was I going to be the victim who fell apart? Or was I going to be the woman who fought back? The call with Amber lasted 47 minutes. I know because I checked my phone log afterward, sitting in my dark bedroom, trying to process what I'd just heard. When we finally hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or collapse into a heap on the floor, though God knows part of me wanted to. Instead, I felt the strange, cold clarity settle over me. Like ice forming on a lake, smooth and hard and unbreakable. I got out of bed, walked to Marcus's office, and stood in the doorway. The room looked innocent enough. Desk, laptop, external monitors, ergonomic chair. Photos of us on the shelf. A plant I'd given him that was somehow still alive despite his claiming to have a black thumb. All of it was set dressing. Props in a play. I walked to his desk and tried to open his laptop. Password protected, of course. I tried his birthday, our anniversary, his mother's name, all the passwords I knew for our shared accounts. Nothing worked. I opened his desk drawers carefully, the way you do when you're not supposed to be snooping. Pens, notebooks, business cards for his fake company, charging cables. In the bottom drawer, underneath a stack of manila folders, I found something interesting. A prepaid debit card. Not in his name, in the name of Michael Lee. My hand started shaking. I took a photo of it with my phone, put it back exactly where I'd found it, and closed the drawer. In our bedroom closet, way in the back behind his winter coats, I found a small locked box I'd never noticed before. It was one of those fireproof document safes, the kind you'd use for passports and birth certificates. I tried prying it open. No luck. I considered smashing it, but that would alert him. I took photos of it from every angle instead, and texted them to myself. Then I went back to bed and lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my husband to come home. He walked through the door at 4:23 a.m. I heard his keys jangle, heard him move through the apartment quietly, trying not to wake me. I heard him pause outside our bedroom door, and I kept my eyes closed, my breathing even, pretending to be asleep. He came in, undressed in the dark, and slid into bed next to me. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Perfume, maybe, or just the scent of another woman's shampoo. He wrapped his arm around me and whispered, "I love you, Liv." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from reacting. Because what I wanted to do was turn around and claw his face. What I wanted to do was scream at him, demand answers, make him hurt the way I was hurting. But I didn't, because I'd already decided I was going to play the game better than he did. I was going to be 3 steps ahead. I was going to take everything from him the way he'd been planning to take everything from me. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how Amber and I destroyed Marcus, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. The next morning, I woke up before Marcus and went through my normal routine. Shower, coffee, professional clothes, makeup. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and practiced my smile. Natural, unsuspecting, trusting. The perfect naive wife. When Marcus woke up, I kissed him good morning like always. "You got in late," I said lightly, pouring him coffee. "I know. Baby, I'm sorry," he said, rubbing his eyes. The investor dinner ran long, and then I had to drive back from Bellevue. "I didn't want to wake you." "It's okay," I said, handing him his mug. "How'd it go?" "Really well, actually. I think we're finally going to close this round." He smiled at me, and God, it looked so genuine. "Things are looking up. Maybe we can finally take that trip to Europe you've been wanting." "That would be amazing," I said, and I meant it. Because by the time I was done with him, I would absolutely be taking a trip to Europe. Just not with him. At work that day, I couldn't concentrate. I sat in my office on the 14th floor, staring at spreadsheets without seeing them, my mind racing. During my lunch break, I called Amber. She answered on the first ring. "Olivia, we need to meet," I said. "Today. Can you get to Seattle?" "I can be on a plane in 2 hours," she said without hesitation. We made a plan. She'd fly up, and we'd meet at a hotel near the airport, neutral territory, away from anywhere Marcus might see us. We'd pool our information and figure out our next steps. "Olivia," Amber said before we hung up, "I know this is insane. I know we're basically strangers. But I think," she paused, "I think we might be the only people who can stop him." "We will stop him," I said, and I was surprised by the steel in my own voice. "Whatever it takes." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before in my 12 years at Morrison & Associates. I lied to my boss. I told him I had a family emergency and needed to leave early. He took one look at my face and told me to take the rest of the week if I needed it. "Is everything okay?" he asked, genuine concern in his eyes. "It will be," I said. I met Amber at the Marriott near Seattle-Tacoma at 5 p.m. She was waiting in the lobby, easy to spot because she looked exactly like I felt. Devastated, furious, and determined. She was beautiful in a completely different way than I am. I'm petite, Chinese-American, dark hair always in a professional bun. Amber was tall, blonde, athletic, the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a CrossFit commercial. She was 28, 6 years younger than me, and when our eyes met across the lobby, we both just knew. We got a meeting room with a conference table, ordered coffee and sandwiches neither of us touched, and spread everything out. "Let me show you what I found," Amber said, opening her laptop. What she showed me made my blood run cold. She'd found Marcus's work phone, the one he kept password protected, in his gym bag while he was in the shower. She'd managed to get into it, using his fingerprint while he slept. The phone contained text threads with 4 different women. 4, including us. There was me, Olivia, the successful financial analyst in Seattle, married for 2 years. There was Amber, the dental hygienist in Portland he'd been dating for 18 months, who thought they were in an exclusive, committed relationship heading toward marriage. There was Jessica, a real estate agent in San Diego he'd actually legally married 3 years ago, who believed he was a venture capitalist who traveled constantly for work. And there was Nicole, a teacher in Denver he'd been seeing for 2 years, telling her he was a software engineer going through a complicated divorce. Amber had screenshots of everything. The text messages where he told each of us he loved us. The photos he'd sent, many of them identical shots from the same locations, recycled for different women. The careful choreography of a schedule bouncing between cities, between lives, between versions of himself. He has a spreadsheet, Amber said, her voice shaking. I found it on his laptop. He keeps track of all of us. Our schedules, our salaries, how much money he's gotten from each of us, notes about our vulnerabilities. She turned the screen toward me and I saw it. A literal spreadsheet with our names across the top and rows of data beneath. Under my name, Olivia Chun, financial analyst, $145,000 salary, owns condo, no mortgage, trust fund from grandmother, $220,000 accessible. Vulnerabilities, wants children, people pleaser, conflict avoidant. Status married. Extraction timeline, 8 to 12 months. Estimated take, $400,000 plus. I thought I might throw up. Under Amber's name, Amber Rodriguez. Dental hygienist. $68,000 salary. Savings $45,000. Inheritance coming, mother's estate, $200K, 6 months. Vulnerabilities, lonely, daddy issues, desperate for commitment. Status, girlfriend. Extraction timeline, 6 months. Estimated take, $250,000. Under Jessica's name, the extraction had already happened. $380,000 taken over 3 years. Under Nicole's, $125,000 so far. This is a business to him, I said slowly. We're not people. We're revenue streams. There's more, Amber said. She pulled up another file. I found his real identity. His name isn't Marcus Chun. She showed me a driver's license. Same face, different name, Marcus Nguyen. Then another license, Michael Chun. And another, Marcus Lee. He has at least 6 different identities, Amber said. Different social security numbers, different backstories. He's done this before. There are old threads in his phone from women 3, 4 years ago. Women he's already scammed and disappeared on. I felt that cold clarity deepen. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't even just theft. This was a systematic criminal enterprise. We need to call the police, I said. I already did, Amber replied. They told me unless I had proof of actual theft, bank statements showing fraudulent transfers, forged signatures, it was a civil matter. They said relationships are complicated and maybe we should hire a lawyer. That's bullshit. I know. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes that had stopped crying hours ago. But I have an idea. My uncle is a retired FBI agent. He still has contacts. If we can prove this is organized fraud, that he's crossing state lines, that he's committed identity theft and wire fraud, it becomes federal. What do we need? Everything, Amber said. Bank records, photos, text messages, testimony from all his victims. We need to find Jessica and Nicole. We need to document every lie, every stolen dollar, every forged document. We need to build a case so solid that even the best lawyer in the country can't get him out of it. I looked at this woman I'd met 2 hours ago, the stranger who should have been my enemy, the other woman, the mistress, but who had instead become my ally. Okay, I said. Let's burn his whole world down. We stayed in that conference room until midnight, building our plan. We divided responsibilities. Amber would contact her uncle and start the federal process. I would use my forensic accounting skills to trace Marcus's financial trail. Together, we'd reach out to Jessica and Nicole. He's supposed to be in Portland with me this weekend, Amber said. He thinks I don't know anything. He texted me earlier saying he can't wait to see me. He's supposed to be here in Seattle, I said. He told me he has no travel this week. We looked at each other and smiled. The same cold, calculated smile. So he's lying to both of us, Amber said. He always is, I replied. But this time we're ready. We exchanged numbers. We promised to update each other daily. We hugged. Awkwardly at first, then tighter, the embrace of 2 soldiers who just realized they were fighting on the same side. When I got home that night, Marcus was asleep in our bed. I stood in the doorway watching him, this man I thought I knew, and felt absolutely nothing. No love, no anger, just cold, perfect focus. I was going to take him down, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. The next morning, I woke up and did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work. Not because I was actually sick, but because I had more important work to do. Marcus kissed my forehead before he left. Feel better, baby. I'll bring you soup for lunch. You're so sweet, I said weakly, playing the part. Don't worry about me, though. I know you have meetings all day. Nothing's more important than taking care of my wife, he said with that perfect smile. The moment the door closed behind him, I was out of bed and moving. I started with our joint bank account, the one where my paychecks got deposited and from which I paid all our bills. I logged in and began downloading every statement from the past 2 years. Then I started examining them line by line with the same scrutiny I'd use for a client audit at work. What I found made my hands shake with rage. There were transfers, small ones at first, $200 here, $500 there, going to accounts I didn't recognize. They'd started about 6 months into our marriage and had been increasing steadily. In the past 3 months alone, nearly $15,000 had disappeared in increments small enough that I hadn't noticed. I cross-referenced the dates with Marcus's travel schedule. Every time he went to San Diego, Portland, or Denver, money would vanish from our account within 24 hours. I screenshot everything. Every transaction, every date, every amount. Next, I went into his office and did what I should have done months ago. I searched everything. I was methodical, careful to put things back exactly as I found them. In a file box labeled tax documents, I found something interesting: receipts. Hundreds of them. Hotel rooms in cities where he claimed to stay with college friends. Jewelry purchases I'd never seen. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. And most damning, receipts from a jeweler in Portland dated 6 months ago for an engagement ring identical to the one Marcus gave me. He bought the same ring for Amber. I photographed everything with my phone, my hand steady despite the fury burning in my chest. In the locked safe I'd found in the closet, I knew there had to be more. I couldn't open it without alerting him, but I had an idea. I called a locksmith and explained I'd lost the key to my safe. He came within the hour. "Your husband won't mind?" the locksmith asked as he worked. "Oh, he's the one who asked me to call." I lied smoothly. "He lost the key and needs some documents for his business." 10 minutes later, the safe was open. Inside, 3 more driver's licenses with Marcus's face but different names. 2 more phones, both dead. A stack of cash. I counted it. $18,000. Marriage certificates for Jessica and Nicole, both showing Marcus Chun, or Marcus Nguyen, or Michael Lee as the groom. And most chilling, a notebook. The notebook was a master document. It contained detailed profiles of more than just the 4 of us. There were at least 10 other women, going back 5 years. For each one, he'd written their names, occupations, estimated net worth, and what he called emotional vulnerabilities. For me, he'd written, abandoned by ex-fiancé 2 years before we met. Fear of being alone. Desperate to prove she can have a successful marriage. Perfect target. I photographed every page with shaking hands. There were notes about his strategies. Always mirror her love language. If she gives gifts, give gifts. If she wants quality time, give quality time. Make her feel like she's never been understood before. And there were notes about extraction. Once trust is established and access to accounts is secured, begin small transfers. Blame bank errors if noticed. Gaslight about spending if questioned. When maximum extraction is reached or suspicion grows too high, stage a business emergency that requires immediate relocation. Disappear. Never look back. This wasn't just a con. It was a refined system. He'd been doing this for years, perfecting his craft, leaving a trail of devastated women and empty bank accounts behind him. I called Amber immediately. "I found his playbook," I said. "And there are more victims. At least 10 we don't know about yet." "Jesus Christ," Amber breathed. "My uncle wants to meet with us. Can you come to Portland tomorrow?" "I'll be there." That afternoon, Marcus came home with soup from my favorite Vietnamese restaurant. He sat on the edge of our bed, stroking my hair, playing the concerned husband. "You look terrible, baby," he said with perfect sympathy. "When did you last take a sick day?" "You work too hard." I wanted to throw the soup in his face. Instead, I smiled weakly and let him feed me spoonfuls like I was a child. "Thank you for taking care of me," I whispered. "Always," he said, kissing my forehead. "That's what husbands are for." After he left the room, I got up and vomited in the bathroom. Not from illness, from revulsion. The next day, I told Marcus I was going to stay with my sister in Tacoma for the weekend to recover fully. He encouraged it, said it would be good for me to get away and rest. I have to fly to San Francisco anyway, he said. Investor meetings all weekend. Might as well take care of yourself while I'm gone. San Francisco. Right. I pulled up the tracking app I'd secretly installed on his work phone while he was in the shower that morning. According to the GPS, his phone was in San Diego. He was going to see Jessica. I flew to Portland and met Amber at a small law office downtown. Her uncle, Robert Rodriguez, was exactly what you'd picture. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd spent 30 years hunting criminals. Also in the room was Agent Sarah Chun from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. No relation to me, despite sharing a last name, though she made a joke about how we could be cousins and how that might help build rapport. Ladies, Agent Chun said after Amber and I had introduced ourselves and explained everything. What you're describing is a pattern consistent with what we call affinity fraud and romance fraud operating as an organized criminal enterprise. She opened a laptop and showed us a database. We've been tracking a network of romance scammers for the past 3 years. They're sophisticated, organized, and they've stolen an estimated $50 million from victims across 12 states. Robert leaned forward. The man you know as Marcus Chun is almost certainly part of this network. They recruit individuals with sociopathic tendencies, train them in psychological manipulation, provide them with false identities, and help them target wealthy victims. You're saying there's someone above him? I asked. Someone running this operation? We believe so, Agent Chun said. We've never been able to identify the ringleader, but the pattern is clear. Someone is coordinating these cons, taking a percentage, and helping the scammers disappear when things get hot. Amber pulled out her folder of evidence, the spreadsheet, the photographs, the text messages. I added mine, the bank statements, the receipts, the driver's licenses, the notebook. Agent Chen's eyes widened as she reviewed everything. This is gold, she said. This is the first time we've ever gotten access to a scammer's actual planning documents. With this, we can trace his money, find his handlers, and potentially bring down the entire network. What do we need to do? I asked. We need Jessica and Nicole, Agent Chen said. We need them to cooperate and provide testimony. And we need you two to keep playing along while we build our case. My stomach dropped. You want us to keep pretending we don't know? I know it's hard, Robert said gently. But if you confront him now, he'll disappear. He's done it before to other women. We need time to freeze his assets, secure warrants, and coordinate with law enforcement in multiple states. That takes weeks, maybe months. Months! Amber's voice cracked. I have to keep sleeping next to him for months. You don't have to do anything, Agent Chen said firmly. This is your choice. We can arrest him now on what we have, but without the full network, without all the evidence, he might get a lighter sentence. He might even make bail and run. I looked at Amber. She looked at me. We both knew what we had to do. We'll do it, I said. Whatever it takes to make sure he pays for all of it. There's one more thing, Agent Chen said slowly. If we're going to prove conspiracy and organized crime, we need to catch him in the act. We need him to try to steal money, to use fake identities, to communicate with his handlers. You want us to give him opportunities to incriminate himself, Amber said. Yes, and we want to record everything. They set us up with equipment, tiny recording devices that looked like phone chargers, apps on our phones that would back up all texts and calls to secure FBI servers, GPS trackers for his cars. Document everything, Agent Chen instructed. Every lie, every manipulation, every time he transfers money or uses a fake identity. Build the case from the inside. Over the next 2 weeks, Amber and I became something we'd never imagined, undercover investigators in our own lives. We contacted Jessica in San Diego. At first, she didn't believe us. She called Amber a liar, accused us of trying to sabotage her marriage. But when we sent her photos, Marcus with me, Marcus with Amber, Marcus with Nicole, she called back an hour later, sobbing. He took everything. She wept over the phone. My savings, my inheritance from my grandmother, even the money I'd set aside for my niece's college fund. I thought we were building a life together. I thought. We know, I said gently. We thought the same thing. But we're going to stop him, Jessica. We're going to make sure he never does this to anyone else. She agreed to cooperate. Nicole in Denver was harder. She'd been so deeply manipulated that she believed Marcus was just going through a rough patch, that his ex-wife, supposedly Jessica, was crazy and vindictive. He warned me that she might try to contact me, Nicole said when Amber called her. He said she was mentally unstable and wouldn't accept that their marriage was over. Nicole, listen to me, Amber said with incredible patience. I'm going to send you something. Just look at it. Then you can decide what you want to believe. She sent Nicole the spreadsheet, the one with her name on it, listing her as a target, quantifying her worth, cataloging her vulnerabilities. Nicole called back 20 minutes later, her voice barely a whisper. When can I meet you? We all met in Portland, 4 women who should have been enemies but who were instead united by our shared devastation. We sat in a conference room with Agent Chin and Robert, and we told our stories. Jessica, who'd been married to Marcus for 3 years and had lost nearly $400,000. She'd sold her car to give him investment capital. She'd taken out credit cards in her name for his business expenses. She'd even mortgaged her house. I'm going to lose my home, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm 42 years old, and I'm going to lose everything because I believed a man who said he loved me. Nicole, who'd given Marcus $125,000 over 2 years, money she'd inherited from her father. My dad worked 2 jobs his whole life to leave me that money. He wanted me to be secure. And I gave it to a con artist because he made me feel special. Amber, who'd been planning to give Marcus her mother's inheritance, $200,000 as soon as the estate settled. And me, who'd lost $35,000 so far but had been 2 weeks away from giving him access to my trust fund from my grandmother. The trust that was worth $220,000. He almost got all of us, I said. If Amber hadn't found that phone, if she hadn't called me, we'd all be destroyed. Agent Chin looked at each of us. You 4 women are incredibly brave. What you're doing, continuing to interact with him while building this case, that takes courage most people don't have. It's not courage, Jessica said bitterly. It's rage. I want to watch him burn. Over the following weeks, we executed our plan. Each of us wore recording devices during interactions with Marcus. We documented everything. I recorded him lying about where he'd been. Just business, baby. Boring investor meetings. I'd much rather be home with you. Amber recorded him asking for money. I just need to bridge this gap until the funding comes through. You believe in me, don't you? Jessica recorded him pressuring her to refinance her house. We could take that cash and invest it. Double it in 6 months. Then you can pay off the mortgage, and we'll have money to travel. Nicole recorded him telling her he loved her while he was legally married to both Jessica and me. We compiled evidence of his multiple identities. Photos of different driver's licenses. Different social security cards. Different bank accounts and different names. We traced his money. This was where my skills as a forensic accountant came in handy. I followed the electronic trail of every transfer, every withdrawal, every deposit. The money he stole from us wasn't going into savings. It was being funneled into offshore accounts, broken into small transactions to avoid detection, and shared with someone else. There's a second person, I told Agent Chin during one of our weekly update calls. Someone named Victor Zhang. Marcus sends him 30% of everything he steals. That's our ringleader, Agent Chin said excitedly. That's the person we've been looking for. Olivia, this is huge. Through bank records and shell companies, we traced Victor Zhang to a luxury apartment in Vancouver. He was the organizer, the trainer, the person who recruited con artists like Marcus and taught them how to target wealthy victims. The FBI opened a parallel investigation into Victor Zhang. Within weeks, they'd identified 12 other scammers working under his organization, targeting victims across North America. You 4 have potentially saved dozens of people from being victimized, Robert told us during one meeting. Maybe hundreds. But none of that made it easier to go home and share a bed with the man who betrayed us. None of that made it easier to smile and play along while our hearts were hardened with rage. I lay awake at night next to Marcus, listening to him breathe, wondering how many times he'd done this. How many women had lain beside him, trusting him, loving him, having no idea they were sleeping next to a predator. The plan was to let Marcus make his final move. Agent Chin wanted to catch him attempting to drain my trust fund, the big score he'd been working toward for 2 years. My trust would become accessible on my 35th birthday, which was 6 weeks away. Marcus had been increasingly talking about investment opportunities and how we should put that money to work instead of letting it sit. Your grandmother would want you to use it to build something, he said one night over dinner. Not just let it gather dust in some account. I played along. You're right. Maybe we should talk to a financial planner. I've actually been researching some options, he said smoothly. There's this venture capital fund that specializes in tech startups. Minimum investment is $200,000, but the returns are incredible. 15 to 20% annually. That sounds almost too good to be true, I said carefully. I know it sounds that way, but I've vetted them thoroughly. I can set up a meeting if you want. Let me think about it, I said. What Marcus didn't know was that the FBI had already set up a sting. They created a fake investment fund with real-looking paperwork and a convincing website. When Marcus inevitably tried to funnel my money through this investment, every transaction would be documented as wire fraud. But 3 weeks before my birthday, something happened that accelerated everything. I came home from work on a Wednesday afternoon and found Marcus packing a suitcase. What's going on? I asked, genuinely confused. He looked up, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked rattled. Not the smooth, controlled Marcus I was used to. He looked panicked. I have to go to Singapore, he said quickly. Emergency with the company. One of our major investors is threatening to pull out. I need to fly out tonight. Singapore. You've never mentioned having investors in Singapore. It's new. Recent development. I didn't want to worry you. He zipped the suitcase. I'll probably be gone for 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. I kept my face neutral, concerned. That's so sudden. Do you want me to come with you? No. He caught himself, softened his tone. No, baby. You have work. I'll handle this. I'll call you every day. I watched him throw random clothes into the suitcase, and I knew. He was running. Something had spooked him. Maybe one of the other women had said something. Maybe Victor Zhang had warned him. Maybe his instincts had finally kicked in. The moment he left for the airport, I called Agent Chen. He's running, I said. He just left for Singapore. He's going to disappear. We're on it, she said. We've been monitoring his communications. He booked a one-way ticket to Toronto under the name Michael Lee. From there, he's probably planning to get to Vancouver where Victor Zhang is. Can you stop him? We have teams at the airport. The moment he tries to board, we'll arrest him. But Olivia, she paused. We need you to do something. We need you to transfer a portion of your trust fund to trigger the wire fraud charge. We need to catch him actively stealing from you. My hands were shaking. How much? $50,000. Transfer it to the account he thinks is the investment fund. He'll immediately move it to his offshore account, and we'll have him. I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. This was it. The moment where I actively participated in my own victimization to bring him down. Okay, I said. Tell me what to do. Within an hour, I'd moved $50,000 from my trust fund to the fake investment account the FBI had set up. Within minutes of that transfer, Marcus, currently sitting in an airport lounge, moved the money to an account in the Cayman Islands under the name Marcus Nguyen. Agent Chin called me. We got him. Wire fraud, crossing state lines, identity theft. Federal charges. We're moving in now. What about the others? I asked. Jessica, Amber, Nicole. Teams are arresting Victor Zhang in Vancouver and his network of scammers across the country. It's happening simultaneously. I turned on the news. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Multi-state romance fraud ring busted. Dozens arrested in coordinated FBI sting. My phone rang. It was Amber crying. We did it. Oh my God, Olivia, we actually did it. Then Jessica called. Then Nicole. We were all crying, laughing, barely able to believe it was over. Agent Chin sent me a video from the airport. Security footage showed Marcus being approached by FBI agents as he tried to board his flight. I watched him go pale, watched him try to run, watched him being tackled to the ground and handcuffed. I played it 3 times. That night, I slept in my bed alone for the first time in 2 years. I should have felt relief. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left only a shell. The man I'd loved never existed. The marriage I'd believed in was a performance. The future I'd imagined was a fairy tale. But at least now he would pay. They all would pay. The arrest was just the beginning. The real work, the complete destruction of Marcus Chun and his entire criminal network, was about to begin. Agent Chin called the four of us together 3 days after the arrests. We met at the FBI field office in Seattle, ushered into a secure conference room with photos and documents covering every wall. What you're looking at, Agent Chin explained, gesturing to the display, is the biggest romance fraud prosecution in FBI history. 17 scammers, 143 victims, $52 million stolen over 7 years. The walls were covered with faces. Some I recognized from Marcus's notebook, others were strangers. But all of them had the same story. They targeted vulnerable people, built fake relationships, and systematically destroyed lives. Victor Zhang is the kingpin, Agent Chin continued, tapping a photo of a handsome man in his 50s. He's been running this operation since 2017. He recruits people with sociopathic tendencies, usually from foster care backgrounds or troubled families, and trains them in psychological manipulation. He provides fake identities, sets up shell companies, and teaches them how to extract maximum money while avoiding detection. How does he find them? Nicole asked, her voice still shaky. Online forums, dating apps, even prison pen pal programs. He looks for people who are charismatic but lack empathy. People who can lie without remorse. Then he grooms them, teaches them the system, and takes 30% of everything they steal. Robert, Amber's uncle, leaned forward. The good news is we have enough evidence to put them all away for decades. The bad news is that to ensure maximum sentences, we need victim testimony. That means you four, and many others, will need to take the stand. Jessica's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. We have to face them? In court? Yes, Agent Chin said gently. I won't lie to you, it's going to be difficult. Their lawyers will try to discredit you, make you look naive or complicit. They'll argue that these were consensual relationships, that you gave money willingly. That's exactly what they were designed to look like, I said, my voice cold. That's the whole point. Exactly. And that's why your testimony is so powerful. You can explain how the manipulation worked. How they isolated you, gaslit you, controlled your reality. How they used sophisticated psychological techniques that most people don't even recognize as abuse. Over the next several weeks, we prepared. Agent Chun connected us with a prosecutor named Michael Torres, a man in his 40s who specialized in complex fraud cases. He was intense, focused, and he believed us completely. These men, and the 2 women in the network, are predators, Torres told us during our first meeting. They're not misunderstood romantics or desperate people making bad choices. They're calculating criminals who view human beings as ATMs. And I'm going to make sure the jury sees them exactly as they are. He coached us on testimony, how to stay calm when defense attorneys attacked our credibility, how to explain financial details without losing the jury, how to describe emotional manipulation in ways that would resonate. The defense will try to make you look foolish, Torres warned. They'll ask why you didn't see the signs, why you gave him money, why you stayed. You need to be ready. We practiced. Hour after hour, we sat in mock courtrooms and answered brutal questions. Miss Chun, you're a financial analyst. Don't you find it ironic that you, of all people, were fooled by financial fraud? Ms. Rodriguez, you gave the defendant access to your bank accounts after only 6 months. Doesn't that suggest poor judgment on your part? Ms. Williams, you were legally married to the defendant for 3 years. Are you saying you never suspected anything in 3 full years? Each question was designed to humiliate us, to make us doubt ourselves. But Torres taught us to flip the script. I'm a financial analyst, which is exactly why the defendant targeted me. He knew I could access significant funds. My expertise didn't make me immune to psychological manipulation. It made me a more valuable target. I gave him access to my accounts because I trusted him, which is exactly what he spent 6 months engineering. That's not poor judgment. That's being a victim of a sophisticated con artist. I suspected many times, but he was expertly trained in gaslighting. Every time I questioned him, he made me doubt my own perception of reality. That's what psychological abuse does. We learn to take their weapons and turn them into shields. Meanwhile, Marcus and his co-conspirators sat in federal detention, denied bail because they were flight risks. According to Agent Chen, Marcus had tried to claim he was the victim, that Victor Zhang had forced him into the scam, that he'd been trying to escape. "He's lying, of course," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "We have recordings of him bragging to Victor about how easy you were to manipulate, how he perfected his wounded but strong persona specifically for you." The word stung, but I'd moved past hurt into something colder, something more focused. "Good," I said. "Let him lie. It'll make his testimony more devastating when the jury hears the recordings." The prosecution had an embarrassment of riches when it came to evidence. Marcus's notebook with detailed notes on all his victims. The spreadsheet tracking our extraction timelines. Text messages where he and Victor discussed strategies. Bank records showing the money trail. Testimony from 17 victims across multiple states. But Torres wanted more. He wanted the trial to be so comprehensive, so devastating, that there would be no possibility of appeal, no chance of reduced sentences. "I want these people to die in prison," he told us bluntly. "And to make that happen, I need to show the jury not just what they did, but who they are. I need the jury to understand that these aren't people who made mistakes, they're people who enjoy destroying lives." That's when Amber had an idea. "His phone," she said during one of our strategy sessions. "The work phone I found. I made a backup before the FBI took it. There are videos on there. Private videos he took." Agent Chin sat up. "What kind of videos?" "Him talking to Victor. Planning cons. And," Amber swallowed hard, "videos of him having sex with women and secretly recording it. Mocking them afterward." The room went silent. "Did he record you?" Torres asked carefully. "I don't know. I couldn't watch them all. Tears filled her eyes. "I just knew they existed." Jessica's face had gone white. "He recorded us. During. We need those videos," Torres said. "Not the sexual content. That won't be admissible. But the conversations with Victor, the planning, the mocking. That's consciousness of guilt. That's proof of intent." Over the next week, federal investigators went through every file on every device Marcus had ever used. What they found was worse than we'd imagined. Marcus had recorded hundreds of hours of footage. Some of it was planning sessions with Victor, discussing which women to target next, comparing notes on manipulation techniques. Some of it was Marcus alone, talking to the camera like he was making a documentary about his own crimes. In one video, recorded just 3 months before his arrest, Marcus sat in a hotel room and talked directly to the camera. "Day 847 with Olivia," he said with a smile. "She still has no idea. She actually asked me yesterday if I wanted to have a baby. Can you imagine? She wants to bring a child into this fake marriage." He laughed. "I told her we should wait until my business stabilizes. She bought it completely. God, she's so naive, so desperate to believe in the fairy tale." When Torres showed me that video in his office, I watched it 3 times without showing any emotion. Then I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and threw up. When I came back, Torres looked at me with something like awe. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I'm just the angriest." We had more than enough for conviction. But I wanted more. I wanted complete annihilation. That's when I came up with the plan. "We should invite the media," I said during one of our meetings with Torres and Agent Chen. "Not just local news. National news. This story has everything: romance, fraud, multiple wives, FBI stings. It's sensational. We can't control the narrative once media gets involved," Agent Chen warned. "I don't want to control it," I said. "I want everyone to know what he did. I want his face on every news channel. I want people to Google his name for the next 20 years and find nothing but his crimes. I want to make sure he can never, ever do this again." Jessica nodded slowly. "Olivia's right. Public shame is part of the punishment. Let people see exactly who these men are." Torres considered it. "If we go public, we risk turning the trial into a circus." "Good," Amber said fiercely. "Let it be a circus. Let everyone watch these men squirm." Torres made the call. Within 48 hours, the story was everywhere. FBI busts $52 million romance fraud ring. One man, multiple wives. Con artist had 4 wives in 4 cities. Spreadsheet tracking victims. Women team up to take down the man who deceived them all. My phone exploded with interview requests. 60 Minutes, 2020, Dateline, CNN. Every major news outlet wanted our story. At first, I ignored them all. But then I realized this was another weapon. I agreed to one interview with 60 Minutes on the condition that all 4 of us, me, Amber, Jessica, and Nicole, could appear together. The interview aired 2 weeks before the trial. We sat side by side on a couch, 4 women who should have been enemies but who had instead become something like sisters. The interviewer asked the obvious question, "How do you 4 feel about each other, knowing you were all involved with the same man?" I answered first. He positioned us as rivals. He wanted us to hate each other, to compete for him. That way we'd never compare notes. But once we realized what he'd done, we understood we were never enemies. We were all victims of the same predator. And together, we're strong enough to stop him. Amber added, "He thought we'd be too ashamed to come forward, too embarrassed to admit we'd been fooled. But you know what? We're not ashamed. He should be ashamed. And after this trial, he will be." The interview got 8 million views. The public response was overwhelming. Mostly supportive, though there were the usual trolls saying we should have known better, asking why we didn't see the signs. But for every troll, there were 10 people sharing their own stories. Women who'd been scammed. Men who'd lost money to romance fraudsters. Families destroyed by cons. "You've started a movement," Torres told me the day before the trial began. "Victims are coming out of the woodwork. We're getting tips about other fraud rings, other scammers. The FBI is opening new investigations based on information people are sending in." "Good," I said. "Let it all come out. Let every one of these predators be exposed." The night before the trial, the 4 of us had dinner together at my condo. We ordered Thai food and drank expensive wine, and tried not to think about the next day. "Are you scared?" Nicole asked. "Terrified," Jessica admitted. "I have to look at him. I have to sit in that witness box and describe how he made me fall in love with him, how he convinced me to give him everything, how he destroyed my life. And his lawyers are going to try to make me look stupid." "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "None of us are. We're survivors. And tomorrow we're going to make sure he pays for every single thing he did." Amber raised her wine glass. "To revenge." "To justice," I corrected. "To both," Jessica said. We clinked glasses and drank, for women bound together by betrayal and united by fury. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. The federal courthouse in Seattle was packed. The gallery was filled with victims, media, curious onlookers, and families of the accused. Security was tight, metal detectors, bag searches, plainclothes marshals stationed at every exit. Marcus was brought in wearing a suit his lawyer had provided, looking almost like the man I'd married. Almost. But his eyes gave him away. They were calculating, searching, looking for an angle even now. He saw me in the front row, sitting between Amber and Jessica, with Nicole on Amber's other side. His face flickered with something. Surprise. Maybe, or fear. Then the mask came back. He looked away. The other 16 defendants were in the courtroom too, sitting with their lawyers, all wearing similar expressions of false confidence. Victor Zhang sat at the main defense table, silver-haired and distinguished-looking, like a CEO rather than a criminal mastermind. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a black woman in her 60s with a reputation for being brilliant and taking no bullshit. "Perfect. All rise," the bailiff called. The trial began. Torres's opening statement was devastating. He didn't start with statistics or legal jargon. He started with a story. Marcus Chen, though that's not his real name, walked into Olivia Chen's life 4 years ago at a conference in Portland. He was charming, successful, attentive. He made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. He listened to her talk about her work. He remembered small details. He was patient, never pushing too fast. He was perfect. Torres paused, letting that word hang in the air. And that was the problem. He was too perfect. Because Marcus Chen wasn't real. He was a character, carefully crafted by the man sitting at that defense table and his criminal handler, Victor Zhang. A character designed with one purpose: to extract as much money as possible from Olivia Chun before disappearing. He walked to a screen where photos appeared: Marcus with me, Marcus with Amber, Marcus with Jessica, Marcus with Nicole. But Olivia wasn't alone. Marcus Chun, or Marcus Nguyen, or Michael Lee, or David Torres, or whatever name he was using, was simultaneously running the same con on 3 other women. While he was kissing Olivia goodnight in Seattle, he was texting Amber Rodriguez in Portland, saying he couldn't wait to see her. While he was promising Jessica Williams in San Diego that they'd grow old together, he was planning a future with Nicole Martinez in Denver. Torres let the jury absorb that. Then he brought up the spreadsheet. The defense will try to tell you these were real relationships that went bad. That money was shared willingly between romantic partners. But this, he tapped the screen. This is not how people in love treat each other. This is a hunting ledger, a profit and loss statement, a document that lists human beings as revenue sources with extraction timelines. He read from the spreadsheet, his voice flat and clinical. Olivia Chun. Estimated take, $400,000 plus. Vulnerabilities, wants children, people pleaser, conflict avoidant. Does that sound like love to you? Or does that sound like a predator identifying the weaknesses of his prey? The jury was riveted. Several jurors were looking at Marcus with undisguised disgust. Torres continued for another 40 minutes, laying out the evidence methodically. The fake identities, the stolen money, the psychological manipulation, the network of scammers, Victor Zhang's role as orchestrator. By the end of this trial, Torres concluded, you will see that these defendants are not con artists who made mistakes. They are not desperate people who acted out of poverty. They are sophisticated criminals who built a multi-million-dollar enterprise based on destroying lives. And they enjoyed every minute of it. The defense's opening statement was predictable. Marcus's lawyer, a slick man named Richard Feldman, tried to paint his client as a victim of circumstance. My client grew up in foster care, Feldman began. He was abused, neglected, taught that the only way to survive was to manipulate others. When he met Victor Zhang, he saw a father figure, someone who offered him belonging, purpose. Yes, he made terrible choices. Yes, he hurt people. But he was also being manipulated himself by a master criminal. I nearly laughed out loud. The victim card. Of course. Feldman continued, arguing that the relationships were real, that feelings developed, that money was shared willingly between partners. These women are painting themselves as helpless victims, he said. But they're all highly educated, successful professionals. They made choices. They chose to give money to someone they were in a relationship with. Now they regret those choices, and they're looking for someone to blame. I felt Amber's hand find mine under the table. I squeezed it hard. Torres's case was methodical and devastating. He started with Agent Chen, who walked the jury through the investigation, explaining how the FBI had tracked the scammers, identified the network, and built the case. Then came the forensic accountant who traced every stolen dollar through shell companies and offshore accounts. Then came the psychologist who explained how long-term manipulation works, how scammers create trauma bonds, how victims are systematically groomed to trust and obey. This isn't about stupidity, Dr. Sarah Martinez testified. This is about sophisticated psychological warfare. These scammers use techniques that are similar to those used by cults and domestic abusers: isolation, love bombing, gaslighting, intermittent reinforcement. The victims never stood a chance. But the most powerful testimony came from us. Jessica went first. She sat in the witness box, hands folded in her lap, and told her story in a clear, steady voice. I met Marcus at an open house. I'm a real estate agent, and he came to one of my listings. He said he was looking for a place for his company's new office. We started talking. He was charming, interested in my work. He asked me to show him more properties. She described how the relationship developed, how he'd been patient, never rushing her, how he'd told her about his difficult divorce, and how meeting her had made him believe in love again. He proposed after 18 months. We got married in a small ceremony. He said he didn't want a big wedding because his ex-wife had ruined his first one. I understood. I wanted to give him a fresh start. Her voice cracked slightly. Over the next 2 years, he convinced me to invest in his business. First $50,000, then $100,000, then more. He said we were building our future together. He showed me fake bank statements, fake business plans, fake investor meetings. I believed all of it because why wouldn't I? He was my husband. Feldman tried to rattle her during cross-examination. Ms. Williams, you're a successful businesswoman. Don't you normally do due diligence before making large investments? I did due diligence. I saw bank statements, incorporation documents, investor agreements. They all looked legitimate because they were professionally forged. But you gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars over 2 years. At what point did you become suspicious? Every time I asked questions, he had answers. Every time I felt doubt, he reassured me. That's what gaslighting is, Mr. Feldman. It makes you doubt your own instincts. So you're saying you bear no responsibility for your own financial decisions? Jessica looked him directly in the eye. I'm saying I was systematically manipulated by a professional criminal. Yes, I made choices, but those choices were based on false information, provided by someone I trusted completely. That's not poor judgment. That's being the victim of fraud. The jury nodded. Feldman backed off. Nicole testified next, describing how Marcus had positioned himself as her savior during a difficult time in her life. I'd just gone through a bad breakup. I was lonely. He seemed to appear exactly when I needed someone. He listened to me. He made me feel like I wasn't broken. She talked about how he'd asked for money, temporarily, to help with his divorce settlement, promising to pay her back as soon as his assets were unfrozen. I gave him my inheritance from my father, $125,000. Money my dad had worked his whole life to leave me. And Marcus took it all and then asked for more. Amber's testimony was the most emotional. She broke down twice while describing how Marcus had been planning to propose, how she'd been shopping for wedding dresses, how she'd told her entire family about him. I thought I'd found my person, she sobbed. I thought. She couldn't finish. The judge called a brief recess. When court resumed, Amber composed herself and delivered the knockout punch. I found his phone. I saw the spreadsheet. I saw my name listed as a target with a dollar amount next to it. I saw him describe me as desperate and easy to manipulate. I saw him tell Victor Jean that I was the perfect mark because I wanted love so badly. She looked directly at Marcus. You didn't just steal my money. You stole my ability to trust. You stole years of my life. You stole my belief that people can be good. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors were crying. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness box with my head high. I'd practiced this moment 1,000 times. I knew exactly what I was going to say. Torres began gently. Miss Chun, can you tell the jury how you met the defendant? I told the story. The conference, the charming man, the whirlwind romance. I described our wedding, our life together, the thousands of small moments that I believed were real. He knew exactly what I wanted, I said. He'd studied me like a subject. He knew I wanted to feel special, to feel chosen. So he made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Like he saw me in a way no one else ever had. I described finding out about the other women, about Amber's phone call, about meeting Jessica and Nicole, about discovering the spreadsheet and the notebook. When I found his planning documents, I saw myself described as conflict avoidant and people pleaser. Those aren't compliments. Those are vulnerabilities he identified and exploited. He knew I wouldn't make waves. He knew I'd accept his excuses. He'd engineered my compliance. Torres showed the jury the video of Marcus talking to his camera, the one where he mocked me for wanting a baby. The jury watched in horrified silence as Marcus's recorded image laughed about my naivety. How did you feel watching that video? Torres asked. Like I'd been sleeping next to a stranger for 2 years. Like every kiss, every I love you, every intimate moment had been a lie. Like I'd given my heart to someone who saw me as nothing but a paycheck. Feldman's cross-examination was brutal, but I was ready. Miss Chun, you're a forensic accountant. Isn't it your job to detect financial fraud? Yes, which is exactly why the defendant chose me. He knew that if he could fool me, someone trained to spot deception, he could fool anyone. My expertise didn't make me immune. It made me a trophy. You transferred $50,000 to an investment account shortly before his arrest. Why? Because the FBI asked me to as part of their sting operation. They needed to catch him actively committing wire fraud. So you willingly participated in a trap. I willingly participated in bringing a criminal to justice. Yes. Isn't it true that you were angry when you found out about the other women? Angry enough to want revenge? I smiled coldly. I wasn't angry about the other women, Mr. Feldman. I was angry about the criminal enterprise. I was angry about the systematic fraud. I was angry about the dozens of other victims. And yes, I wanted justice. That's not revenge. That's citizenship. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Morrison banged her gavel but didn't look displeased. After the four of us testified, Torres brought out the big guns. He played recordings of Marcus and Victor planning cons. He showed emails discussing manipulation tactics. He brought in an FBI analyst who explained how the money was laundered through shell companies. He brought in other victims, women from other states who'd been scammed by other members of the network. Each one told a similar story: charm, trust, manipulation, theft, devastation. By the time Torres rested his case, the jury looked ready to convict without deliberation. The defense tried to mount a case, but they had nothing. Feldman called character witnesses who testified that Marcus had a difficult childhood, that he'd been abused, that he deserved compassion. But Torres destroyed them on cross-examination. Did this difficult childhood prevent him from creating sophisticated forgeries? Did the abuse make him forget how to manipulate? Or did he make a choice, over and over again, to hurt people for profit? Victor Zhang's defense was even weaker. His lawyer tried to argue that running a training program wasn't illegal, that he'd never explicitly ordered anyone to commit fraud. But Torres had recordings. Victor's voice, clear as day. Target the lonely ones. The ones who want to believe. Drain them slowly so they don't notice. And if they get suspicious, gaslight them until they doubt reality. The trial lasted 3 weeks. At the end, Torres gave a closing argument that left the courtroom in tears. These defendants want you to believe they're victims too. Victims of circumstance, of childhood trauma, of bad choices. But victims don't keep spreadsheets of their targets. Victims don't mock the people they're hurting. Victims don't build criminal empires. He gestured to where the four of us sat. These women are victims. They trusted. They loved. They believed in the goodness of another human being. And they were destroyed for it. But they didn't stay victims. They became warriors. They fought back. They built a case. They took down an entire criminal network. He turned to the jury. Your job is simple. Listen to the evidence. Look at the documents. Watch the videos. And ask yourself, are these men criminals? Or are they victims? The answer was obvious. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant Marcus Chin guilty. On the count of identity theft, we find the defendant Marcus Chin guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant Marcus Chin guilty. Guilty on all 23 counts. Same for Victor Zhang. Same for all 17 defendants. The courtroom exploded in applause and tears. Jessica sobbed openly. Nicole covered her face with her hands. Amber grabbed me and held on tight. I sat very still, watching Marcus's face as the verdict was read. Watching the moment he realized it was over. Watching him understand that he'd lost. He looked at me once, just once. And I smiled. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. We'll reconvene in 6 weeks for sentencing. Defendants remanded to custody. As the marshals led Marcus away in handcuffs, he turned back one more time. His mouth formed words I could read. I'm sorry. Too late. 20 years too late. The sentencing hearing was 6 weeks later. Judge Morrison was efficient and merciless. Marcus Chin received 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Victor Zhang got 35 years, essentially a life sentence for a man in his 50s. The other 15 scammers received sentences ranging from 12 to 20 years each. You treated human beings as commodities, Judge Morrison said, looking directly at Marcus. You exploited trust, weaponized love, and destroyed lives for profit. The damage you've caused is incalculable. She ordered full restitution, every stolen dollar to be repaid, though we all knew we'd never see most of it. The money was gone, hidden in offshore accounts we'd never fully trace. But that wasn't the point anymore. The financial settlement gave us everything we could recover. Marcus's car sold. His fake company assets liquidated. Even his clothes and watches were auctioned off. Every penny went into a victim compensation fund. Jessica got her house back. The FBI helped prove the mortgage fraud, and the bank reversed the refinancing. She kept her home. Nicole received a settlement from a victim's assistance fund that partially replaced her father's inheritance. Amber used her portion to start a nonprofit helping romance fraud victims navigate the legal system and rebuild their lives. And me? I wrote a book, The Extraction Timeline. How I Took Down the Con Artist Who Stole My Life became a bestseller. Every penny of the advance and royalties went to fraud victim advocacy. If this story is making your blood boil like mine was, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. 2 years after the trial, the 4 of us gathered in Portland for the anniversary of the day Amber first called me. We'd all healed in different ways. Jessica was dating someone new, a kind, boring accountant she'd met through friends. Nicole had gone back to school for a master's degree. Amber had thrown herself into her nonprofit work. And me, I'd learned to trust again, slowly and carefully. I met someone, a professor at UW who'd read my book and reached out to interview me for his research on financial crime. David was patient, transparent, and refreshingly ordinary. He had student loans, a messy apartment, and 0 interest in my money. I have access to your bank accounts now, I told him after 6 months of dating, showing him my phone. He looked confused. Why would I want that? That's when I knew he was real. We got married in a courthouse with just our closest friends. No spectacle. No performance. Just 2 people making honest promises. Sometimes I still think about Marcus. Not with longing, never that. But with a kind of cold satisfaction. He's in federal prison in Colorado. According to public records, he'll be eligible for parole in 2039. He'll be 56 years old, and he'll emerge into a world where his face is synonymous with deception. Every Google search of his name brings up the trial, the victims, the crimes. He destroyed his own future more completely than he ever destroyed ours. To Marcus, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for showing me what I'm capable of. Thank you for proving that when women stop competing and start collaborating, we're unstoppable. Thank you for underestimating us. You thought we'd be too ashamed to fight back. You were wrong. We weren't your victims. We were your downfall. And Amber, Jessica, Nicole, my sisters in survival, we didn't just get revenge. We got justice. We got closure. We got our lives back. That's the real victory. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They're just as satisfying. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story.